Hi, everyone. Welcome to our latest episode of the Anaplan Community Podcast, our Journey series, where we take a few moments to talk to some of our incredible community members about their journey through the Anaplan ecosystem. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by my friend Austin. Austin, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me.
Great to have you on here. I want to kind of start like I start all of these and start at the beginning. Would you mind telling us like how you found out about Anaplan, how you started with Anaplan? Start there and we'll just kind of flow through.
Yeah, I was never really a technology person. I went to school for economics, which was because it was like finance adjacent, but kind of like broad. And then I worked at some startups, out of college and things like that. And I was poking around, and then I reached out to a partner, Peloton Consulting Group.
Yeah.
I wanted to get into consulting, didn't really have like a specific technology I wanted to go into.
Mhm.
And they said, "Hey, we're starting this Anaplan practice. You be one of the first guys in it." And I said, sounds good to me. Went there and it was like trial by fire. I was not the most well versed in anything technology.
Yeah.
Excel, not great in Excel, but I had some customer facing experience and I think that helped. And, my first project with Anaplan, I really dug into the tool, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you remember that project?
I do. I
Yeah.
do.
Talk to me about that. Yeah.
I remember the first meeting. I'm sitting there and we're going through, requirements gathering, things like that. And the technology is brand new to me, So we're going through and people are saying all these different finance terms. And one of them I remember was EBITDA. Didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know it was an acronym. I thought it was some random word that someone just said.
Right.
So it was a lot of learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the technology was new to me and all of the FP&A processes were new to me. So I would go back to the hotel. I was traveling for work. I would go back to the hotel and I would just redo like the learning, the level one model builder, level two,
Yeah.
and then see how that applied to what we were talking about during the day.
Hmm.
So, like, for example, someone said, "Hey, we have this list of cost centers." I would go, I think it was like the candy company at that time was the
Yep.
training. So I would say, "Oh, like cost centers are like your, companies or geos or whatever it was."
Hmm.
And I really tried to dig in. And I think the thing that I like the most about the tool is that someone like myself with not that much of a technology background can essentially figure it out. And not only figure it out, but do so much with it.
Hmm.
You can go from this giant data set of millions of billions of rows to something that's actually meaningful to someone that's in an FP&A standpoint.
Hmm.
And I thought that was really cool. There's not a lot of to get to where the tool can work. There's not a large learning curve. I don't think personally. I didn't experience it.
Yeah. Well, and to hear someone who wasn't super tech savvy and wasn't into that
Oh no, I was
walk
bad.
into this,
It was bad. I mean, it really, but I think that's also an advantage sometimes. I feel like there because I mean, what I've seen is that Anaplan usually sits under like that FP&A umbrella as opposed to an IT umbrella. That's really where it sits better, in my opinion.
Sure.
I think it's good to come into it with like a blank slate. Just like I don't have any kind of other technology experience. I'm gonna come into it and figure it out. I mean, the formulas and things like that are pretty simple. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
saying that as someone who
Right.
didn't really know anything. So
I mean, if you're saying that, then I mean, and you're feeling that way, I think that's incredible. And I've heard that a lot from community members is that sometimes it feels a little overwhelming, and then you get in there, you start playing with it. Was there anything at that time? Obviously, you're new to it, you're playing around. Was there any sort of resources or other stuff besides that level one, level two model building that you were looking at? Was there anyone you were reaching out to during that period of time when you were first getting into it?
yeah, I was working
Yeah.
with Zaf Kamar
Yep.
at
Yeah.
Peloton, and Zaf is like he's an expert. I mean,
Yep.
he's an absolute wizard with the tool.
Yeah.
So he had the perfect amount of light touch to
Hmm.
like send me off in the right direction,
Yep.
but not be like, here, this is how you do it.
That's
So
huge.
there was some trial and error to it.
Yeah.
And I do think that there are steps to it, right? Like the first time you get into it, it's how do you achieve this answer?
Hmm.
And then it's how do you achieve this answer in the correct fashion? And then it gets you know, it's kind of like a competitive thing. Like, how can I get from point A to B the most simple way possible?
Hmm.
And that's really where it started to click. You know, if you're writing formulas that are like an essay long,
Yeah.
even if it works, that's not it's incorrect. You
Hmm.
know, so I would get the correct answer, but then I would say, well, how do I get rid of this? And you
Yeah.
know, it goes from an essay to you know, haiku.
Right.
You know, it's a
It's a
lot
good
less
way to
there,
look at it. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So that was as I was working through a consulting partner, that eventually I kind of got to a point where Anaplan was like in my back pocket.
Yes.
And what was really cool with that is that once I knew I could depend on my knowledge of the tool, then I started learning all these different FP&A processes. Like that was like my in to sit in with, you know, people talking about forecast, budgeting, balance sheet, cash flow, all that good stuff. So that was like that was the eureka moment
Yes.
was was at Peloton, and I really appreciate my time there. It was
Incredible. How
awesome.
long were you there for?
I was there for about 3 years.
Oh, 3 years. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about that time. Obviously, you're fresh to Anaplan, learning all this, got Zap, you've got all this stuff happening, like you're learning, you're growing. What was it like? Talk to me about maybe some big projects, maybe some stickiness. I'd love to just hear a little bit about your time there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was super interesting. First thing, I hadn't really traveled that much.
Yep.
My first flight I ever went on was after college. I always
Yeah.
did like
Yeah.
the East Coast, like beach towns and stuff like that. So my
Yep.
first, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you're flying out every week, you know, to go to. I was in New Hampshire and Charlotte, and
Cool.
a lot of the middle of the country and stuff like that. So it was a cool
Yep.
opportunity. It was a lot to learn.
Yep.
But you have to do it. You know,
Mhm.
you can kind of that that role, that situation was you can kind of feel when you were out of the loop, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. Like you would be
Yeah.
sitting in a meeting and people would be talking and it'd be like, wait a minute, like I don't understand anything that's going on. And that was how kind of how it was in the first couple meetings, you know, the first couple of weeks of a project, of my first project. And I hated that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to contribute, you know, I didn't want to just sit there as someone that was taking notes and things like that. I wanted to actually contribute.
Absolutely.
Hey, this is why we would why we do this,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing I learned is that it's intimidating to roll onto these projects where it's a new group of people. They're
Mhm.
expecting a lot out of you, you know,
Yeah.
from the start.
Yep.
But my advice to someone in that role would be don't be intimidated. Like people want you to ask questions.
Mhm.
It's better if you ask questions in the start and say, you know, if someone gives you a requirement and says, "Hey, we have to do it this way." Well, why do you have to do it this way? Could we do it another way? Let me you know sketch out what you might be able to do differently, because most of the times when I mean my first couple projects were Anaplan was net new to these customers,
Right.
so it's a learning experience. You know, it's a learning
Everyone's
experience.
right. They're
Everyone's,
learning from you. Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
have to know that. Like
Right.
I think it's important to let yourself be heard.
Absolutely.
You don't want to sit there through requirements gathering and just be silent. And
Mhm.
then, you know, after 2 weeks or 3 weeks or however long it is, it's like, all right, we're off, and get to the end of your first sprint and come back and well, this isn't at all what we asked for.
Right. Right.
It has to be an iterative process. And that's why I like Anaplan so much, because it's flexible. You know, you're always on the fly, you're always making changes, things like that.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've learned too, because I too I'm not the most tech savvy. I mean, you can see all of my records back. I'm an analog guy, not a
Yeah.
digital guy. Um, one of the things that I've noticed about our community in general is that it's an amazing place to go to ask questions. And there's never a feeling of can't believe you don't know that. Like,
Right.
how can you be dumb? And because Anaplan is complicated, there is a lot of little pieces. There's a lot going on and millions of use cases. So it's really it's encouraging to hear you say that. I think that that's one of the things that sometimes holds us back is we feel nervous to ask questions, but like we're all learning. I'm learning from you right now. Like
Yeah,
that's what this is about. So
exactly.
you're there for about 3 years. Where do you go after that? What happens
I
next?
so I was there for about 3 years, and like I
Yeah.
said, I really liked the FP&A aspect of it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
felt like I had Anaplan, you know, I was good at it.
Yep.
I can digest these business processes and then translate it into Anaplan, but I felt like I was only at like the peak of or the tip of the iceberg of the like digging into it. And
Hmm.
the other thing was, you know, when you're a consultant, you get to the end of these projects and it's like, all right, we built you this, good luck. most of the time, and then your hands off. You don't really get to see how it's used.
Right.
So I really wanted to get into a more like a FP&A role
Nice.
and still use that Anaplan background as like my not a crutch. I feel like crutch has a negative term, but like
But
my strength or like
yeah.
what gets me into those rooms.
Hmm.
So I went to WeWork.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
so they were an Anaplan customer at the time. They were looking
Yes.
for an Anaplan resource. They had just finished their implementation and they were getting handed over, and they realized, hey, we need a little bit of extra help. That was interesting. That was very interesting. Just the shift from going from a more project based timeline
Hmm.
to trying to handle different things every single day. It's
Sure.
when you're on a project, it's here's the start and here's the finish. There might be some gray areas after, but there's kind of a timeline to it. Where
Hmm.
when you're an FP&A, there's a FP&A calendar, there's forecasts, there's budgets, there's things that break during the close and all this stuff. So
Hmm.
that was a very interesting time, and it honestly was very intimidating. It was a very intimidating time for me
Because of
because
that pace, because it was next,
right.
next.
You
Yeah.
would you would go in, you go in one day and you think, all right, I know what I have to do today. I have these tasks. And you would go in and something would come up, hey, the CFO or whoever requests this report. So everything that you had planned to do that day now just goes out the window. And now this
Yep.
is the priority. So, but I was learning FP&A processes, things like that. So it was kind of like I jumped out of one pool, went into the other,
Hmm.
and I wanted to find the middle ground of that. So something that was a little more Anaplan related,
Yep.
but I could still, dig into learn more FP&A.
Yeah.
So I ended up coming to Anaplan.
Oh, well, I mean, if you're gonna do it,
I didn't mean to jump ahead. I mean,
no, I love it.
I wasn't at WeWork too long. I was there for like a cup of coffee pretty much.
Gotcha. And that happens. I mean, and you were looking for a different experience. And I mean, if you're gonna learn about Anaplan even more and be more excited about FP&A
Oh yeah.
planning, I mean, this is the spot, right? I
This
mean,
was like the big leagues, and
yes.
it's like I'm trying to think of a good comparison, but it was like but like you said with the community,
Yeah.
you're sitting there and a lot of times you're working through these situations or these complex issues and in your
Mhm.
brain you're like this is impossible. Like I'm
Yeah.
or like you kind of get that tunnel vision where
Hmm.
you're working through something and you're like there's no way. And then you go on community and you say, you know, so and so and so, and there's four people that had the same exact thing
Absolutely.
and a solution, right?
Yes.
So that's what's really nice about the community aspect of it. And then
Absolutely.
when I joined Anaplan, that was like I'm
Yeah.
in the community. Like I'm always in the community, but this is where
You're part of
Anaplan
it.
is the community.
Yes, correct. Talk to me about that. What was that transition like? Because I mean, you've been in consulting, then you've been at WeWork, and now you're here in I mean, the mothership, if you will.
Yeah,
Like, what was that like? It must have been exciting and also maybe daunting. I don't know. Talk to me a little bit about your first sort of reaction coming on board here.
it was super exciting. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't. It was exciting is pretty much the main word I would use to
love that.
describe it.
Yeah.
Um, just being on a team with people that are so well versed in the tool.
Hmm.
Everyone's working towards the same goal. We're all on different projects, but you can always, Slack someone and say, "Hey, I have this issue." They'll jump on a call with you. Um, all of the teams outside the team I was on professional services. Like all the teams outside the teams were always helpful. I'm gonna
Yeah.
give a shout out Rob Marshall.
Yep.
I mean, Rob Marshall is
Yeah.
he's helped me so many times, and it was great because it wasn't just a here's the fix. It would be let me show you why this works. Let
Hmm.
me show you, or let's like brainstorm together and things like that.
Yes. Yes.
Because you're on a project and the things you're working through are very specific to that customer.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's good to have another set of eyes come in and say, "Hey,
Always.
like, explain to me what's going on very, very, very generally, because you're in the
Mhm.
weeds right now, and let's figure out a solution." So, and there were
Yeah.
so many people at Anaplan like that. So
Absolutely.
it was very exciting. And in my career, I think that's where I went from. I kind of try to approach things from a simplistic standpoint.
Hmm.
So I will give this as far as like if people listen as far as Anaplan tips, and I said this about the formulas.
Yeah.
Try to use as much as the tool that's already given to you rather than put it like formulas and complex items. Take a step back and say, hey, instead of this giant formula, maybe I can build out 2 additional modules that flow into this, because that will help you down the road.
Absolutely.
Anyone who's ever worked on a Anaplan project or a model, everyone has those modules that sit in those models that when they get an email and say, hey, this is broken, they know in the back of their head, like, my day's ruined, you
Mhm.
know? And that's not a sustainable approach.
Right.
I
So,
think,
oh, sorry, I
yeah,
didn't mean to cut you off. No, 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 go for it. I didn't mean to
no, so
cut you off. Yeah.
that's really where, and it was kind of competitive, it
Yeah.
was like, I would come up with something and I would be like, this doesn't really feel right, or I'm getting the right answer, but it seems like, and then someone would come on and say, yeah, you could do this with 2 less steps. So it's like,
Mhm.
why didn't I know that?
Right.
And
Yeah.
you try to, iron sharpens iron. That's what it was like working at Anaplan. There were so
Right.
many people there that helped me out, but also it was like, well, I want to get to that level where I could help people out.
Absolutely.
Um, and it was great. I mean, it was great.
And I feel like you have gotten to that level. I mean, when I look at what you've been doing, what you've done, what you were doing here, you're a certified master Anaplanner. Talk to me about moving into that next level. Was that while you were here at Anaplan that you decided to go for that? Or talk to me. I'd love to hear just a little bit more about that. I
When I
mean, you've got an
when I
incredible
became a
resume.
master planner,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
at Peloton. That
It
was
was
at
up. You
Peloton.
did all the way
Yeah,
back. Amazing.
yeah,
What
yeah. That
talk
was
to
a really
me
cool opportunity.
Tell me about that. Tell me about what made you want to do that.
Well, I think I forgot what the requirements were back then, but they came out. I forgot what year the program came out, but I had just finished everything, all the trainings up to it. I think
Yeah.
the course was like a 299 course. I think that's what it was called, and
Yeah.
it was this it was it was tough because the course would literally, it was like an implementation. It would give
Mhm.
you requirements, and you would just go off on your own and build a model, and then you would get on the phone with someone and they would review it.
Yep.
Um, and I had just finished that, and then something came out where it's like, hey, you could join Master Ana Planner. Here's like the 3 requirements, and it's,
Sure.
you have to have all your training up to this point. You have to have a certain amount of model edits during the year, which I was on like 3 projects, so
Yeah.
that was fine. And then you had to take the test, and the test was tough.
Yep.
But I reviewed all the stuff that it was tough, but I think there was like a study guide where it was, you're going to be tested on this. Here are the articles that would help you. It wasn't
Yep.
giving you the answer, but it was like, here, hey, go get the answer.
Yes. Yep.
And then that was great. I mean, it was kind of a short, I think it was 2 years after. I think that was a requirement too. You had to
Yeah.
be using Anaplan for 2 years. And it was kind of like a full circle moment to
Mhm.
go from, you're in
Yeah.
this, the first requirements meeting I was talking about, where I didn't know what EBITDA was, and where now I'm like a master and a planner, and it's like, it's awesome.
It's an
And it's a really
incredible
cool
journey.
thing that you guys do, that Anaplan
Absolutely.
does.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an incredible journey. And it's one of those things that I hear from so many different certified master planners about, that they were just like, I'm gonna go for it. And the knowledge that you now share, the knowledge that you're able to impart on folks, like, I mean, that is huge. And you're here at Anaplan for a couple of years. How long were you here for?
I think 3 also.
3 altogether. Yeah, nice.
About 3.
Big projects, craziness, anything you want to share during that time? Maybe some of the cool things that folks would want to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot of projects
Yeah.
that I was on weren't your normal FP&A projects, which I
Okay.
thought was a very sorry, someone just messaged me.
It happens.
Which I thought was a very cool, I'm gonna pause here for to
Sure.
kind
Yeah,
of,
no worries.
I was on a lot of projects that weren't FP&A related, or they were kind of FP&A adjacent.
Mhm.
It wasn't your standard forecast budgeting, things like
Yeah.
that. It was more unique, and
Yep.
that kind of got me to think outside the box.
Sure.
But I do think that there's this fine line with Anaplan, or with anything, where there's a line between creativity, like being creative enough to figure out what the answer is,
Mhm.
but sustainability and scalability. Like, you may have figured out this creative solution with 50 if statements and you got the right answer,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, you have, like, if you're a consultant, at the end of the day, you're handing it off to someone. So I can't hand off a model to someone that has a formula or something that's just it works right now, but it's not going to work in the future.
Yeah.
A lot of these businesses, I mean, they turn on a dime. They say, "Hey, we're doing things this way this year, but next year we're gonna do things completely different."
Hmm.
And if you build things correctly, those changes are outpatient surgery, where it's a
Yep.
day.
Yep.
If you do things correctly, where you get the correct answer, but it's not scalable, those things are, you might have to rebuild an entire model.
Right.
And that's not the right answer. It's the right answer at the time, but it's not the right answer.
Right.
So that's really what my time at Anaplan taught me, is that there's you might be create you can get as creative as you want, but at the end of the day, it has to work, and it has to work well, and it has to work over and over and over again, no matter what the business or your customer or whoever decides to change it does what they wish.
Absolutely. So Austin, I guess the question is, where are you now? After
I'm
you
at
left
Densefly
Anaplan?
Serona. I'm at Densefly Serona.
Nice. How long you been there and how's it going?
I'll be at a year in a
Yeah.
month. December,
Nice.
beginning of December will be a year.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Great. Yeah.
Back to FP&A.
Yep. Back to the comfort place. Yep. You love it.
Back
You
to
love
wanting
it.
to dig
Yep.
into FP&A processes, things like that.
Yeah.
Everyone's been great, and it's great that I was able to be at Anaplan and then leave, but still be in contact with Anaplan, be able to bounce ideas. I still talk to people that I work with at the company, and
Great.
I'm able to bounce ideas and things like that off people. It's such a the community. I don't have any experiences with other technologies, so I'm spoiled.
Yeah.
But the fact that you have this community to talk to, like the master Anaplanner community, but also just the Anaplan community in general,
Hmm.
it there's always someone has always there's always another person that has had these issues, or these hit these roadblocks that you can always lean on, which
Yeah.
is great.
I love to hear that. I have got one last question because I feel like that's a really great place to transition to this one, which is what's the future hold for you, Austin? What are you excited about and looking forward to the next 6, 8 months? What's on your plans? What's happening?
I'm excited to see what Anaplan comes out with.
Mm,
I feel like we made this effort to transition all of our models to the new UX in
yep,
Anaplan.
yep.
And the reason for that is to be able to kind of take in any kind of new updates and things like that. So I'm really excited to see what it holds, and any kind of additional. At the end of the day, what I want to do is make it easier on the users that use the system. If someone's sitting there for a couple hours spinning their wheels, I like to say, hey, like, reach out and we'll figure out a better solution, because this is not going to work in the future. So I'm excited to see what comes down the pipe with Anaplan, and just figure out how I can use that to make someone else's life a little bit easier here.
Austin, thank you so much. Really appreciate this conversation with you and want to thank everybody for tuning in. We will see you again on our next episode of the Journeys podcast. And remember, you can always find us on community.anaplan.com.